Yes, sir.
Okay, so I think you can see my slides. Sorry. So last year we started amplifier and we started with the general situation that amplifier has a two-port network and the source and load both are having some different impedances. So in that cases, we can have actually three different gain definitions depending on the load impedance and the source impedance. And we define them as power gain. This is PL by P in available power gain, GA, P available from the network divided by P available from the source, and transducer power gain, GT, which is PL divided by P AVS. And we also found expressions for these three different gains, and from this we actually concluded that most of the time we will be using the transducer gain. Now we consider it special situation when we use matching network at the input side and as well as at the output side to match it to external source and load. So external source and load, we are considering it for microwave systems. Then for microwave systems, we consider the referent impedance of 50 ohm. So here it is represented by Z naught. Then the overall transducer gain, including the matching network, it is given by multiplication of the three gains, where GS value is given here, G naught is magnitude of S21 square and GL is this one. Now next, another important condition, this is called the stability condition. So we don't want any oscillation coming out from the amplifier. If we don't take care of this point, then what may happen? Let's say you are going to design an amplifier, but you will end up with some oscillator. It will start oscillating whenever you are connecting the DC power to your amplifier. So similar situation you might have seen in analog electronic classes, but at microwave frequencies, this effect is more prominent because of one reason. So if you recall in analog electronics class, so it is mostly due to feedback, different feedback paths. So you have to take care of that. And here it is because of the same reason, but even a small parasitic value, it can have significant effect because we considered, let's say, C equal to 1 picofarad or less than that, then the corresponding equivalent reactance, it is much smaller. So that's why you have to take special care for this point. And now, if you recall, in basic electronics, you learned Barkhausen criteria for designing an oscillator. So it considers the loop gain going through the amplifier and you have a feedback network. Now for this two-port network, not that always we will be having a feedback network, and here there is also another difference in concept or in our approach in the analysis procedure. What is the difference? Here everything we considered in the form of electromagnetic wave, not just voltage and current. So we'll align our concept then with respect to electromagnetic wave, and let's see then uh, what can give rise to oscillation, and we need to avoid that condition. Well, so here then to be stable as an amplifier, then we need to avoid oscillation, and oscillation is possible for a two-port network if either the input or output port impedances has a negative real part. Now, when we have a negative real part and you calculate gamma for that case, then it becomes more than 1. Now, in practice, really can we have negative real part? Already you learned about GUN diode. GUN diode, it shows negative resistance. In fact, we utilize that negative resistance to design a microwave source or oscillator. We have some other diodes also in the series, like tunnel diode, impact diode, which can also provide negative resistance. But usually the conventional diode, which you learned previously, like a PN junction or Schottky diode, they do not provide negative. Now for BJT or other transistors, they can also show negative resistance. So what is the physical meaning of negative resistance? Physical interpretation is that instead of absorbing power, it will generate some power. So that is the meaning of negative resistance. And whenever we have power generation, then we can have oscillation also. And this is uncontrolled oscillation determined by parasitic effect and other things, and also the device characteristics. So this is undesired, of course, and we want to avoid it, because for now we are concentrating on designing of an amplifier. So then in general, to avoid oscillation, gamma in or gamma out, they should be less than 1. Now let us go back to this figure. So gamma in and gamma out, we are defining for the two-port amplifier itself, right? And gamma S and gamma L, that is for the source side and load side respectively. So we'll be following this same definition here. Now gamma in and gamma out, both of them, they depends on gamma L and gamma S. Last year we derived it. So I also wrote it here once more. Sorry. So if you look here, gamma in for your two-port network, it is given by S11 plus S12 S21 into gamma L divided by 1 minus S22 into gamma L. So even though it is at the input side, gamma in, but of course, the scattering parameters of your two-port network, it has direct relationship to gamma in. Other than that, gamma L also, it determines your gamma in, because a part, due to gamma L, finite gamma L, it is reflected back to your two-port network, and then another part, it goes through the two-port network towards port 1, and then that becomes a part of P1 minus. So then gamma in, it is determined also by gamma L. That is the conclusion. Sorry. So similarly, gamma out also will be determined by gamma S. Well, so then in stability analysis, we have to consider the effect of all of them. Now, in general, gamma S or gamma L, that is determined by the left hand side and right hand side. Now for the left hand side and right hand side, if we don't have any other active components, let's say it is all passive components. So if it is all passive components, then we cannot have negative resistance anytime. Then we can assume gamma S less than 1 and magnitude of gamma L less than 1. So this is true for all passive components, all passive sources. Then now under these circumstances or conditions, we can have two different situations. In one situation, let's say for any value of gamma S and gamma L, always gamma in is less than 1 and gamma out is less than 1. So we never have negative resistance at the input side or at the output side. This condition is called unconditional stability. Unconditional stability. So that means the transistor is stable. We do not expect any oscillation from the amplifier. Now we can have a different situation. Let's say gamma in is less than 1 and gamma out is less than 1 only for a range of gamma s. So we are considering all the possible value of gamma s, but less than 1, of course. Gamma s and gamma l less than 1, but all possible values. from 0 to 1. Now, if we see that only for a given range of gamma S or gamma L, we achieve this condition, gamma in is less than 1 and gamma out is less than 1, then that is called conditional stability. Or sometimes also we call it potentially unstable. So that means a range of gamma S and gamma L will only give you gamma in less than 1 and gamma out less than 1. Now, we'll in fact, we can refer to Smith chart because gamma S, gamma L, their plot, we learned in Smith chart, and for any impedance or gamma calculation, if we utilize Smith chart concept, then it becomes much more easier for hand calculation as well as using MATLAB or some software. So now let us refer to Smith chart and then let's see which part of the Smith chart represents stable condition for an amplifier. Now, what is the basic condition for stability? So let us first consider the unconditionally stable condition. So for unconditionally stable condition, for all values of gamma S and gamma L, then gamma in should be less than 1, gamma out should be less than 1, magnitude of them. Now, gamma in and gamma out already we derived last day. So here, gamma in, this is S11 plus this. So we use the same expression here to find out a relationship on the Smith chart for gamma in and gamma out, and we want to see over which region of the Smith chart this amplifier is stable. Now, I did not include derivation here. It is given in D.N. Pujar's book, so you can go through that. For unilateral transistor, so in addition to that, if I consider unilateral condition, so you recall for unilateral condition, then S12 port 2 to port 1, that is equal to 0. So if we consider unilateral condition, S12 is 0. If we put it here in this equation, gamma in and gamma out, then we see that condition reduces to simply for S11 and S22. Then gamma in or S11 should be less than 1 and S22 should be less than 1. Then how to draw it now on Smith chart? So we can draw some stability circle which will be defined by the loci in the gamma S and gamma L planes. So gamma S, it will be represented in one Smith chart and gamma L in another Smith chart. So gamma S and gamma L, we are varying over all the possible ranges. And there, now we need to plot these two conditions, gamma in equal to 1 and gamma out equal to 1. So gamma in equal to 1 for gamma S case and gamma out equal to 1 for the gamma L case. So we start from then this condition and we'll get two circles after imposing these two conditions. And I said the derivation I did not include here. So directly I'm writing the solutions for two circles. So now you see one is for the output side, another expression is for the input side. So gamma in, it is for the output side because gamma in is dependent on gamma L load, and gamma out, it is dependent on gamma S. Then this gamma out less than 1, this is for the input side. So we'll call the corresponding circle as the input stability circle. Now we put it equal to 1 and from that we solve for the circle equation and find the expression for the center point of the circle and the radius of the circle. Now if you solve it, then radius, it would become a real quantity that actually it should be, and center, it should be a complex quantity. We are plotting it in a complex gamma plane, so you have some imaginary point and some real point. So it is given by this complex quantity. You see CL, so S parameters, they are complex. So we have a complex value here, which defines the center. This is for the output stability circle, and RL is the corresponding radius. Similarly, we have one more set of circle that is for the input. We'll call it input stability circle. So corresponding CS expression is given here, and the radius expression is given here. So here delta, this delta is capital delta is equal to S11 into S22 minus S12 into S21. So this S parameter, this is of the amplifier itself, the two-port network. Now we have already two circles, so we can draw the circle like this. Let us consider the only CLRL case, the first case, output stability circle. So output stability circle, then this is the Smith chart, and for a given value, we calculate given value of what? Given value of S parameter. So given value of S parameter, which is due to the amplifier itself without any matching network, we calculate the value of CL, RL, and then plot the circle. So let us consider the first one. So this is the Smith chart, and this is the stability circle we got from calculation. Well, now next, okay, after before that, let us define one more situation. So now if the device is unconditionally stable, then the stability circle must be completely outside or totally inside the Smith chart. Here we have an issue. What issue? That let's say this is the stability circle we drew, and this is the gamma in equal to 1 circle. Now which part will represent solution for a stable configuration? Is it this part shown by this yellow line, yellow marking here, or this common part shown by the yellow line here? Because we know that it must be less, gamma in must be less than 1. So gamma in is less than 1, but now which part I should choose? This yellow part or this yellow part? Now it depends on the S parameter. So then how to find out which part I should consider for my design? We have to look at the S11 and S22 data. So for this case, then we are considering the output stability circle. We look at the S11 data. Now center point, we know here both the real and imaginary value is 0. So at the center, we check S11 is less than 1 or more than 1. If it is less than 1, then actually the solution should be here, this part, because this point is a part of the solution. And if this value, gamma in value, it is, S11 is more than 1, then this part, it cannot be a solution for stability. Then it might be the solution. This might be the range over which gamma in is less than 1. So that's how we choose the region. So it can be either this yellow part which contains the center, either this common yellow part which excludes the center, depending on the S11 value of your device or amplifier, let's say. Well, now device. So this is actually, now you see, this is just for a range of your gamma in, not that it's completely covering your Smith chart. So this is the general situation where actually, or better to say, this is the conditional stability situation. Now, if it is unconditionally stable, then this circle either must be completely inside the Smith chart or completely outside the Smith chart, so that it will contain this gamma in value. Or mathematically, then we can write down magnitude of CL minus RL greater than 1 for S11 less than 1 and magnitude of Cs minus Rs greater than 1 for S22 less than 1 for the output stability circle and for the input stability circle. Well, so that's how actually we can use Smith chart to find the stable region in general. Now, let's say if we don't want Smith chart analysis, can we do it simply mathematically? Yes, there is actually a condition which we can use to determine mathematically it is stable or not. That simple method for unconditional stability, the first one, it is called K delta test. K delta test. So again, the derivation is given in DM Kojar's book. I'm avoiding it. It was given first by Rollet. So according to his name, we call it the Rollet's condition. So K value, which is given by this expression, it depends on the S parameters of the given amplifier. That should be more than 1. Along with that, we have to satisfy one more condition. We call it auxiliary condition. So for what is that? That delta, this delta, its magnitude, it should be less than 1. So delta previously also used the same symbol. Its magnitude should be less than 1. So if these two conditions are satisfied, then we'll say it is unconditionally stable. But both of these conditions should be satisfied, otherwise not. So we can say that these two conditions are necessary and sufficient for unconditional stability. Now, if the scattering parameters you can put the value and you can calculate at your design frequency. But there is an issue. If the transistor is not or your amplifier is not unconditionally stable, then cannot you design amplifier? No, you can. Then you have to consider that conditional stability condition. So conditional stability condition, unfortunately, we don't have a straightforward relationship like this. Then we have to go back to the Smith chart solution and we have to draw that output stability circle and input stability circle and find out the range of impedances from this. Well, but here also for unconditional stability for this mathematical relationship, we have an issue. It does not say anything about how stable the amplifier is. So basically, relative stability, that information is missing from this. So then it was derived by another person and we call it mu test. And in fact, if you go for RFIC, MMIC or any amplifier design, so it is an inbuilt function for any software. And now we call it, this test is for the relative stability. So mu as given by this expression where capital delta remains same as before. So mu must be more than 1. Then the device is unconditionally stable. So for this scenario, we don't have to calculate these two parameters like the previous one. Only one parameter is sufficient. It will give you, if it is satisfied, then it is unconditionally stable. In addition, if the mu value is much more than 1, you can say that it is more stable. So relative stability is defined or included in your mu. So if it is a more value, then actually it is more stable. But we have a problem actually. If you keep on increasing mu, then the problem is that gain decreases. So in most of the cases, we keep mu value between 1 to 1.4, 1.5 like that, but not less than 1. Also, we learned about K delta and mu test, but all these are for unconditional stability. And if it does not satisfy this, then we don't have any other option, but we need to go back to Smith chart solution. Well, next, then design of amplifier in short. So detailed steps are given in DM Posers for these two simple cases for maximum gain, and second one is the broadband transistor amplifier. So broadband transistor amplifiers, it is not included in your syllabus, just to introduce the concept to you. Well, so the first one is designed for maximum gain conjugate matching scenario. So that means gamma in is equal to gamma S star and gamma out equal to gamma L star. Then overall transducer gain, it is also controlled by your matching network. Input matching network, we defined GS, and output matching network, we defined GL. And also we see that maximum gain will be realized when this section provide a conjugate match between the amplifier source or load impedance and the transistors. So when we go for maximum gain, so obviously it becomes a narrowband design. And then what is the maximum gain? We consider the transducer gain value. So already we used this equation previously. So gamma GT max is equal to 1 by 1 minus gamma S squared is 2 1 squared into 1 minus gamma L square by 1 minus S2 to gamma L square. So it is dependent on gamma S and gamma L. And but we can further simplify it if we have unilateral transistor. That means S12 equal to 0. So for S12 equal to 0, then we can replace gamma S by S11 and gamma L by S22. What is the logic behind it? Because for S12 equal to 0, nothing is coming out from right hand side to left hand side through the transistor. So it will be obviously a narrowband design at a given frequency. Now, broadband transistor amplifier. So you learned about gain bandwidth product. So here we need to decrease the gain, otherwise we can't go for it. Now for broadband transistor amplifier, so what special thing we have to do? First of all, we need to check the stability over the whole frequency range. Then the second thing is that you need to design a matching section. Now, till now, you did not learn about any matching technique for a complex impedance over a wide frequency band. In the impedance transformer, starting from quarter wave transformer to binomial and Chebyshev impedance transformer, you recall that we considered only the real part of the impedance, did not consider imaginary part. When we have both real and imaginary part, then we go for single stop matching. Now, when you do single stop matching, that is valid only at one frequency. Then how to obtain wideband matching over a wideband matching using stops? So actually there is no straightforward method. It is still a problem. So what we do, we use some sort of optimization procedure and try to match the reactive slope. And as I said, that it is a complicated problem. It looks very simple. Just we need to match complex input impedance over a wide frequency range, but practically it becomes very difficult. We usually go through optimization steps. Anyway, so but before that, at least you can calculate what should be the what can be the maximum range for the given device over which I can design my impedance matching network, and that is defined by Bonefano gain bandwidth criteria. Okay, so I did not include it here. Maybe next week, then let us spend some time, because this Bonefano criteria, it is important not just for amplifier. This is for in general any complex impedance. And since we did not learn anything on the complex impedance, so it will give you some upper bound. So the maximum bandwidth over which you can obtain your impedance matching for complex load. It is defined by this Bonefano criteria. It is given in D.N. Pojar's book. Also, we note that S21, it decreases with frequency at the rate of 6 dB per octave. Then what are the common approaches for designing a broadband transistor amplifier? We can have compensated matching networks, then resistive matching networks, negative feedback technique. Balanced amplifier comparatively shows wider bandwidth. Then distributed amplifiers and differential amplifiers. Well, distributed amplifiers, so it is actually, instead of using one amplifier, we use multiple of them, cascade configuration. Okay, so that is again out of scope. So these are different techniques for broadband transistor amplifier design. Now let's see practically then how a transistor amplifier it looks. So in this example, I am showing it by using a FET. It can be also for using a BJT. So here two things are important. One, we have to connect it to some DC source and fix the bias point first, Q point. And the second one is the impedance matching network design under the stability condition. Now, when we fix the Q point, it is not arbitrary. First of all, you should first note down what is your application range. Are you going to use it as a low noise amplifier, or as a power amplifier, or simply a linear amplifier? So a linear amplifier we use to boost up the gain in the amplifier chain. So first one is low noise amplifier, then we add some more amplifiers to increase the gain further. They work as linear amplifier. So first you should note down what would be the application. Next, what would be the mode of operation? So in analog electronics, you learned about class A amplifier, class B amplifier, class AB amplifier, class C amplifier, and there are many more. So at least till this point you learn. So it depends on your bias point, Q point, where you are setting. So accordingly, your efficiency will change. If I consider, let us consider the most simplest case, that is class A amplifier. Now, there are some other issues as well when we go for amplifier design. So this Q point, it is not just determined by your input voltage swing. We also have some other parameters. Mostly this criteria, it comes from your device. So I'm giving some example. Sorry. Transistor FT, one important parameter. Mostly at low frequencies you did not bother about it, but at microwave frequencies we have to bother it. FT is the short circuited unity current gain, right? Now typically it's like a thumbs rule. If you want to design an amplifier at some frequency, let's say X gigahertz, then the transistor should have FT of 10 times of X. But practically for microwave engineer, particularly who are working at millimeter wave frequency range, they do not have this flexibility. They have to work with FT much lower, just 2 times, 3 times of the design frequency. Then the design becomes much more complicated. So that is not part of your syllabus. We are not going to discuss that. So then in general, let's say FT, it should be much higher compared to your design frequency. Otherwise, we have many other conditions, so we need to consider all of them in the design. Now, FT stability depends on your Q point. Not only that,
sir, you are not audible.
okay, sorry. So in your basic electronics or analog electronics lab, if you recall that IC for your BJT typically you used 1 milliampere or less. But for microwave engineer to have sufficient gain and higher FT for the transistor, we use much higher current, 30 milliampere, 100, sometimes even 100 milliampere, 150 milliampere, and so on. So you see, then in conclusion, Q point not only determined by your amplifier or RF signal swing, it is or efficiency, it is also determined by the device characteristics. So design becomes complicated. So you have a range of IC or ID for FET over which you have to choose. You can't go below or above that. Otherwise, you won't get sufficient gain, your FT will be low, and so on. This type of problems are there. Well, now let's say you have fixed the bias point. So what should be your voltage value? You already fixed. And we try to use a simple bias network. Do not make complicated unnecessarily. Otherwise, it will introduce the parasitic and other things. Now, next thing is that we need to isolate this DC source from the RX source. So here we have a common problem. If you recall again, in basic electronics lab, when you draw the AC equivalent circuit of a BJT amplifier, then you consider that the collector point is grounded through DC source. Here we can't do that. It will be okay. Let me better draw it and show it. Otherwise, it may not be clear to you. So RF design approach is little different than your low frequency design approach. What is the internal resistance of a voltage, ideal voltage source? Any one of you?
So zero.
Zero,
Yes.
zero, sir.
Okay. Then now see, let's say a transistor amplifier which you design in your analog or basic maybe lab. So this is a low frequency amplifier using the base bias technique. And here what you do, you apply your VCC. So plus, minus, and then it is to ground. I'm keeping it very simple. And this is the output point. Okay, anyway. So this is your collector resistance and this is the base bias resistance RB. Now in equivalent circuit, then what you do, AC equivalent circuit. Then in the AC equivalent circuit, you replace the DC voltage source by its Thevenin resistance, right? So if I replace the DC by its Thevenin resistance, which is 0, so it is directly going to ground then. So this is the AC equivalent circuit, and RB is there. Oh, sorry, RB is also grounded. So RB, it is grounded through your DC source, and the collector point, this is also grounded through the DC source. So at microwave frequencies, we have two issues. First of all, your RS, it is not 0 ideally. It can have any value. And the second point, what you are using to connect your DC source, what is the input impedance? So RS, this is I am saying the RF, or better to say input impedance of DC source at your design frequency, RF frequency, at your RF frequency. So let's say you are designing it at 1 kilohertz or 10 kilohertz, then also you can use that approximation, that internal resistance of the DC source is 0 and it does not change anything. But when I'm designing it at 10 gigahertz, then what is the internal resistance of your DC source? It is not 0 anymore. And not only that, what about the connection? So we use wire connection, to DC source, right? Now, if I use a wire connector here from this point to connect your DC source, then looking into your wire, what is the ZIN? You don't have any idea. It can be anything, it can vary. And then your RF impedance, it can be anything. So even cannot draw the equivalent circuit. So then what is the suggestion? Do not allow RF to flow through your DC source. So then at RF frequencies, what we'll be doing? At RF, do not allow RF signal to pass through DC source. How it can be achieved? We do not want to pass it. So we have to then put some component here which will not allow RF power to flow through your DC source. What can be the component?
BSF.
One inductor? Yes, band stop filter or one inductor. Now at low frequency, even for RFIC engineer, they will be using an inductor. Or we can also use one shunt capacitor here. So what is the advantage of shunt capacitor? That shunt capacitor will short, it will provide RF short. So then how it looks, looking toward the DC circuit. So this point is going towards your DC. So it looks like one low pass filter. This point is connected to your DC point, and this point is connected to your collector terminal, right? This is the collector terminal. So RF, this side you have RF plus DC, and right side you don't have any RF. This is called bias T. Now at higher frequencies, it's really difficult to design inductor. It has very low quality factor. It can be even less than 10. Other than that, inductor, capacitor, they have self-resonant frequencies. Now for inductor, self-resonant frequency is much lower. For capacitor, it can be at millimeter wave. So we try to avoid inductor at high frequency, and instead of inductor, we use band stop filter, because all the applications, they are band limited. You consider the case of 2.4 gigahertz, you are using just 85 megahertz of band. So instead of this, then if I use a microstrip line, this end is connected to your collector terminal, and now I use one open stub and connect this point to your DC source. So open stub, it will provide in narrowband band stop filter response, magnitude of S21 versus frequency. Let's say you are using just this much of bandwidth, then it is sufficient for your application. It will work as a bias T. If you are not satisfied with its attenuation, you connect one more shunt capacitor here to ground. Okay, so this open stub, this int is open circuited. Its length is lambda g by 4. Stub length is lambda g by 4. So midpoint is virtually shorted for the RF. So to strengthen that shorting, you connect one more external capacitor in SMD form to ground. Then whatever RF signal coming from left hand side, it will be reflected back. It will be reflected back from the short circuit plane. Then there is an issue. If I have the collector terminal at this point, so at the collector, I don't want any loading because of the band stop filter. Then looking into this stub configuration or this short circuit, we should not have any input impedance, or better to say the input impedance should be infinite. So looking from the collector terminal, Z in, it should be infinite. Then actually this bias T, it has no effect at the collector terminal, right? So we don't have to add anything for the bias T at the collector terminal, or it has no loading effect. Then when it is possible, so this short circuit, I need to transform it to open circuit. Then again, you have to consider this length. This length is lambda g by 4, right? This length should be lambda g by 4. You need to optimize it. Well, this is the part of bias T design, just to give you some conceptual idea how we design bias T, and a part already you did in your simulation lab. So that open stub position we need to optimize. Well, so what we see then, we cannot allow RF power to go through your DC source. That's why you are using band stop filter. Okay, this part is done. And if you choose this separation, which separation? So this band stop filter to your drain terminal or for fed terminal. So this one, this length of this section. So I'm showing it by red color. Length of this section you have to choose properly, so that looking into your BSF, input impedance is infinite. So then it is represented by open circuit. It has no loading effect. Well, so that's how we design the bias T. Now we have to take care of the input side and output side. This DC, it should not pass it to RF in left hand side, or output side, it should be isolated. So we use a capacitor. With capacitor, we don't face much problem. They are close to ideal compared to inductor. So we'll be using two SMD capacitors. And in between, we'll be having the matching network, input matching and output matching network, as we learned. So this is an example of amplifier. If I zoom in, you can identify whatever I said. Instead of microstrip line, they are using CPW line. So this is the input side, this is the output side, and you check, this is a CPW line. So two slots, they are parallel to each other, and at the input side you have coupling capacitor in SMD form. At the output side we have one more coupling capacitor, and this part, it is the bias T part, and the transistor is sitting at the center here. This one is the transistor, and for bias T they used one inductor. Oh, sorry, this resistor is for the baseband, base part, and two capacitors in shunt. Instead of one, they use two. Actually, we use practically two of them, one for the low frequency part, one for the high frequency part. High frequency means from RF point of view, and other than that, your DC adapter may have some oscillation, particularly if you use any SMTP or that type of adapter. So we want to suppress that noise also. So one capacitor in picofarad range, another capacitor in microfarad range. That is the practical approach. So after packaging, amplifier looks like this. Now two special categories, low noise amplifier and power amplifier. You know about them, where we use them. For low noise amplifier, the main thing is that you have to minimize noise, and if we target noise minimization, then you may not get maximum gain. Anyway, that is not important for low noise amplifier. We'll be using more stages to improve the gain after low noise amplifier. But from Phillips equation for cascaded system, we already learned that overall noise figure is determined by the first component. So in general, noise figure of a two-port amplifier F, it is given by F minimum. F minimum is the minimum noise figure of the transistor. So again, transistor noise figure, it depends on its bias point. You can optimize bias point to decrease the noise figure of the transistor itself. And also the equivalent, okay, so also the source condition. So Ys is the source admittance presented to transistor, while optimum source admittance that results in minimum noise figure, and Rn is the equivalent noise resistance of the transistor, Gs real product source admittance. So it is mostly determined by the source side. So what are the steps? First, actually, we choose the bias point for minimum noise figure, and then we optimize the other parameters. Additional information, MOSFET, we always face a problem because of the CGS. So input impedance is very low. That's why difficult to match the impedance. So there are several procedure. You can use series resistance, but that will increase noise. Then practically what we do for RFIC design, we use inductor instead of resistor. Okay, so but that will decrease your gain slightly. It's called inductive source degeneration. Next, it is power amplifier. Okay, I do not think we have enough time. Maybe another day we can have 10-15 minutes discussion on type of amplifiers, because this is also important to have some basic concept on it. So better, let me first remind you that on this Monday we are conducting MCQ test for your microwave theory part, starting at 10 o'clock sharp, because someone of you said that you have another exam at 11 o'clock, and this time we'll be using Google platform. So you check for direction 10-15 minutes, or maybe by Sunday night we will be sharing how to do everything in post. And on Wednesday we have MCQ for the lab. For lab, syllabus is after simulation, whatever you did, all the hard work part. Okay, now we can take a few questions quickly. You can switch on your microphone, and let's say till this point we covered today, and you can ask questions.
Sir, for the unconditionally stable condition, so both the inside circle and outside circle should be either inside the Smith chart or should be outside the Smith chart, right?
Yes. You see here two situations. So S11 is less than 1 or S11 is more than 1. Depending on that, this CLRL circle, it should contain the Smith chart completely, or it should be completely inside the circle. So right side condition, if we have this type of situation, then this circle should be completely inside the Smith chart, right? And if we have left side situation, then your CLRL should be completely outside. So it depends on S11 value. In DM Poacher side, I think they have shown one example with numerical calculations. So you go through it. We don't have enough time to cover that. Then we will understand it much better way. Anything else? So any other question? Okay, then next class, it will be on next Thursday. So before that, Monday and Wednesday, we have 2 tests.